Most people don't lose control all at once. They lose it in small, invisible moments every time they react without thinking, every time they answer when they didn't want to, every time they give a piece of themselves just to keep things smooth. And the strangest part? The more available you are, the less powerful you become. There are people who never raise their voice, never chase, never explain themselves, and yet, somehow, everything around them shifts. Conversations change, energy changes. People start leaning in, trying to understand, trying to regain access. They didn't do more. They simply stopped being so easy to reach. Now imagine what would happen if you did the same. Not disappearing from the world, but stepping back from the constant impulse to react. Choosing silence instead of instant replies. Distance instead of emotional explosions. At first, nothing seems to happen, then everything does. Because the world around you has quietly adapted to one thing, your predictability. People know how to get a reaction out of you. They know what to say, when to say it, how to pull your attention back in. And most of the time, you don't even notice it happening. But the moment you stop responding the same way, you break the pattern, and when the pattern breaks, people get uncomfortable. You'll start to notice it's subtle at first. Someone texting again when you don't reply right away. Someone pushing harder, asking what's wrong, trying to provoke a reaction. And that reaction reveals something important, not about you, but about them. Because when you become less accessible, the people who depended on your constant presence begin to feel it. Not as loss, but as disruption. For a long time, you may have believed that being available made you valuable. That always showing up would eventually be returned, but it rarely is. Instead, you become convenient. A place people go when they need comfort. A voice they call when they need validation, a presence they rely on, but never truly protect. And slowly, without realizing it, you start disappearing from your own life. You say yes when you mean no. You respond when you're exhausted. You explain yourself when no explanation was needed. Not because you have to, but because you learn that your worth depends on how much of yourself you give away. That belief doesn't empower you, it traps you. Because anything that is always available becomes expected, and anything expected loses its value. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't respect what they don't have to earn. And when your time, energy, and attention are always within reach, they stop being seen as something meaningful. They become something people use. So pause for a second. Think about your last few days. How many times did you respond immediately, even when you didn't feel like it? How many times did you give your attention to something that drained you? That's not kindness. That's leakage. And what's leaking is your energy. There's a reason you feel exhausted without knowing why. It's not because life is too hard. It's because your energy is being spent in places that give nothing back. Every reaction costs something. Every argument, every explanation, every unnecessary emotional response, it all pulls from the same limited reserve. And most people never question where that reserve is going. They just keep reacting. But here's where it gets deeper. Your reactions aren't as conscious as you think. They're patterns. Learned responses built over time, ways you've adapted to avoid rejection, conflict, or discomfort. And once people recognize those patterns, they don't need to control you directly. They just need to trigger you, a certain tone, a certain message, a certain kind of silence, and you respond automatically. That's where manipulation becomes invisible, not loud, not aggressive, just subtle, repeated, and effective. Because as long as you keep reacting the same way, the dynamic never changes. But the moment you interrupt that pattern, everything shifts. You don't reply right away, you don't explain yourself, you don't engage in something that drains you. And suddenly the roles start to reverse. The same people who were comfortable now feel uncertain. The same situations that once controlled you lose their grip, not because you fought harder, but because you stopped participating. And that's where real power begins. Not in control over others, but in control over yourself. This is something most people misunderstand about silence. They see it as weakness, as avoidance, as something passive, but true silence isn't passive. It's deliberate. It's the decision to observe instead of react, to understand instead of immediately respond, to hold your energy instead of scattering it. And when you do that, something interesting happens. You start seeing things you couldn't see before. Patterns in people, cycles in conversations, hidden expectations behind simple interactions. You begin to notice who only reaches out when they need something, who gets uncomfortable when you don't play your usual role, who tries to pull you back into old dynamics, and for many of them, your silence becomes a problem, not because they miss you, but because they've lost access to the version of you they understood. While you were reacting, they could predict you, and as long as you were predictable, you were manageable. But now, you've become uncertain, and uncertainty makes people uneasy. Some will question you, some will criticize you, some will try harder to provoke you. And if you're not prepared, you'll mistake that reaction as a sign you're doing something wrong. You're just no longer convenient. And that comes with a cost. Distance, misunderstanding, moments where you question yourself. Because when you stop being who people expect, you don't immediately know who you are. That's where the real work begins. Not in how others respond to you, but in how you respond to that silence. At first it feels empty, like something is missing. You reach for your phone, you feel the urge to explain, to reconnect, to go back to what was familiar. But if you stay with it, something shifts. That silence starts to feel different, less like emptiness, and more like space to think, space to breathe, space to hear your own voice without everyone else's noise layered on top of it. And in that space, you begin to rebuild something most people never truly have. A sense of self that isn't dependent on constant interaction. You stop reacting to everything. You start choosing what deserves your energy. And slowly your presence changes. You speak less, but with more intention, you engage less. But with more clarity, you give less. But what you give actually matters. And here's the paradox. The less available you become, the more your presence is felt, because now it's not automatic. It's intentional. People can't access you whenever they want. They have to meet you where you are. And many won't, not because you've become difficult, but because they were never connected to you, they were connected to your availability. So yes, you will lose people. But what you gain is something far more valuable. You gain yourself. You gain clarity over what you tolerate. You gain control over where your energy goes. You gain the ability to walk away from anything that costs you your peace. And that changes everything. Because once you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable, you realize something you can't unsee. You were never meant to be available for everything. You were meant to be aligned with what actually matters. And that requires selectivity. Not everyone gets access. Not everything deserves a response. Not every situation requires your energy. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is nothing at all. Just presence, just awareness, just silence. And in that silence, something new begins. Not louder, not more visible, but stronger. So the real question isn't whether people will understand you. They won't always. The real question is this: are you willing to be misunderstood in order to finally be at peace? Because the moment you choose that, everything changes.